Red and blue lights pierced the amber glow of evening in Oakwood Heights, one of the city's most exclusive neighborhoods. What began as a routine patrol would become a moment that exposed the dangerous assumptions we make about people who don't fit our expectations. This isn't just another story about a traffic stop. It's about dignity under pressure, the courage to transform injustice into education, and how one woman's response would change an entire community's understanding of what justice truly means. The woman behind the wheel wasn't who Officer Braden Martinez expected to find in this affluent neighborhood, but sometimes the most powerful lessons come when our biases collide with reality, forcing us to confront truths we've been avoiding. This is the story of Federal Judge Zara Ashanti and the traffic stop that became a masterclass in grace, wisdom, and the transformative power of choosing compassion over condemnation. Judge Zara Ashanti navigated her silver BMW through the tree-lined streets of Oakwood Heights, searching for house number 847. At 45, she carried the quiet authority of someone who had spent 15 years commanding federal courtrooms. Her natural hair was pulled into a neat bun, and she wore a navy blazer over dark jeans, casual elegance that reflected her off-duty status after a challenging day of civil rights hearings. The neighborhood spoke of old money and older prejudices. Victorian mansions sat behind iron gates, their manicured lawns maintained by crews who arrived before residents woke. Zara was looking for her law school friend Meridian's new house, moving carefully as she checked barely visible house numbers in the fading light. 3 blocks behind, Officer Braden Martinez was ending what had been a quiet shift. At 26, he was ambitious and eager to prove himself in a department where advancement came to those who showed initiative. When he noticed the BMW moving slowly, something triggered his instincts. The driver appeared to be casing houses. Behavior he'd learned to recognize in his 3 years on the force. The BMW stopped completely in front of a colonial house. Martinez watched the driver peer through her window for 30 seconds before continuing at the same deliberate pace. In his experience, this kind of behavior often preceded break-ins or drug deals. He flicked on his lights. Zara saw the police lights and felt the familiar weight of being a black woman in America, regardless of her title or achievements. She pulled over carefully, hazard lights on, hands visible on the steering wheel. Years of judicial experience had taught her that de-escalation began with her own actions. Officer Martinez approached with standard caution, his training telling him to assess threats while maintaining professional courtesy. "Good evening, ma'am. I'm Officer Martinez. Can I ask what brings you to this neighborhood tonight?" Zara looked up at the young officer and recognized something familiar from her courtroom. A well-intentioned person making dangerous assumptions. Her voice remained calm and measured. "Good evening, officer. I'm looking for 847 Elmwood Drive. I'm having dinner with a friend." Martinez nodded but remained unconvinced. He'd heard similar explanations from people who didn't belong in neighborhoods like this. "Can I see your license and registration?" "Of course." Zara moved deliberately, announcing each action. "I'm reaching into my purse for my wallet. Then I'll get the registration from the glove compartment." The license showed an address in a middle-class neighborhood across town. Not the kind of place where people typically had friends in Oakwood Heights. The name Zara Ashanti meant nothing to him. "Mrs. Ashanti, we've had reports of suspicious activity in this area. People driving slowly, checking out houses. I noticed you stopped in front of that house for quite a while." Zara felt the familiar sting of being criminalized for the simple act of existing while black. "Officer Martinez, I stopped because I was looking for the house number. My friend just moved here, and these numbers aren't very visible. I understand, but this is a neighborhood where people pay attention to unusual activity." The word unusual hung between them, loaded with implications both understood perfectly. "Officer Martinez, what exactly did you observe that qualifies as suspicious or unusual behavior?" Something in her tone, an authority, a precision, made Martinez slightly uncomfortable, but he pressed forward. "Ma'am, you were driving below the speed limit, stopping to look at houses, and frankly, we don't see many people from your background in this neighborhood unless they're working here." Zara's eyes sharpened. My background, Officer Martinez? Could you clarify what you mean? Heat rose in Martinez's cheeks. I just meant, look, I'm trying to do my job. We've had break-ins and people are concerned. I see. In your professional opinion, do I fit the profile of someone likely to commit a break-in? I didn't say that. No. But you pulled me over for looking suspicious while driving to a friend's house. You questioned why someone of my background would be here unless working. I'm curious about what specific criminal behavior you observed. Martinez felt cornered. When people got defensive and asked too many questions, it usually meant they were hiding something. Ma'am, I need you to step out of the vehicle. On what grounds? Am I under arrest? You're being detained for investigation. Investigation of what crime? Ma'am, please step out of the vehicle. Zara unbuckled her seatbelt slowly. Officer Martinez, I want to be clear that I'm complying under protest. I believe this stop lacks reasonable suspicion and may constitute unlawful detention. As she exited, Martinez noticed residents emerging onto porches, drawn by the unusual sight of police activity in their quiet enclave. An elderly man openly recorded with his phone, while a woman across the street watched from her doorway. Turn around and place your hands on the vehicle. Are you conducting a search? Standard safety pat down. I do not consent to any search of my person or vehicle. Frustrated by her knowledge of police procedure, Martinez called for backup. In his experience, people who knew their rights this well had usually had previous encounters with law enforcement. 2 patrol cars arrived within minutes. Officers Chen and Rodriguez approached as Martinez stood with Zara, who remained calm despite visible tension. What's the situation? Officer Chen asked. Like that. Suspicious vehicle. Drivers being evasive, asking too many questions. Zara turned to face the 3 officers. My name is Zara Ashanti. I was driving to a friend's house when I was stopped. I've committed no crime, and I believe this detention is unlawful. Rodriguez looked at Martinez. What was the initial reason for the stop? Suspicious behavior. Driving slowly, looking at houses, doesn't live in the neighborhood. Those aren't crimes, Martinez, Rodriguez said quietly. By now a crowd had gathered. The man with the phone had moved closer, and at least 6 residents watched from porches. A well-dressed woman in her 50s approached with the confident stride of someone accustomed to authority. Excuse me, I'm Patricia Bellwood, Neighborhood Watch Coordinator. What's the problem here? Martinez straightened, grateful for perceived support. Investigating suspicious activity in the neighborhood. Patricia looked at Zara, then back at the officers. What kind of suspicious activity? Driving slowly, looking at houses, Rodriguez answered, his tone suggesting growing doubts. Patricia frowned. That's it? Officer, people get lost here constantly. The house numbers are terrible. Officer Chen stepped away to radio verification of Zara's dinner plans. When he returned, his expression was grim. I reached the resident at 847 Elmwood. She confirms she's expecting someone named Zara for dinner and is wondering where she is. Uncomfortable silence fell over the group. Martinez felt his justification crumbling, but wasn't ready to concede entirely. Even so, we had to check it out. People in this neighborhood have a right to feel safe. It was then that Zara decided silence was no longer an option. Officer Martinez, Zara said, her voice carrying new authority that commanded attention, you're absolutely right that people have a right to feel safe. All people, including people driving to friends' houses. She reached slowly into her purse and extracted a leather wallet. From it she pulled a card and handed it to Officer Chen. I am Federal Judge Zara Ashanti of the United States District Court. The silence was deafening. Chen examined the judicial ID, his face draining of color as the implications hit him. Your Honor, he said quietly, we had no idea. Of course you didn't, Zara replied, her voice calm but carrying the full weight of her position. Because you made assumptions about who I was based on my appearance and skin color. You saw a black woman in an expensive car in a white neighborhood and decided I must be criminal. Patricia Bellwood stepped forward. Your Honor, I'm so sorry. This isn't how our neighborhood operates. Isn't it? Zara challenged. What I experienced is exactly how implicit bias operates. Officer Martinez didn't wake up deciding to harass black people, but he saw me, made assumptions, and acted on them. A federal judge was detained without reasonable suspicion of any crime. Martinez found his voice, barely a whisper. Your Honor, I was just trying to do my job. Zara looked at him directly, her expression softening slightly. She could see his youth, his genuine distress, and recognized a good person who had made a terrible mistake. Officer Martinez, I believe you were trying to do your job, but your job isn't policing people for being black in white neighborhoods. Your job is protecting and serving all citizens equally, regardless of race or assumptions about where they belong. The crowd had grown, and Zara knew this moment was being recorded. She thought about young black lawyers in her courtroom, children in her community, and the opportunity before her. She could file complaints, demand badges, make this national news that would destroy careers. Or she could do something transformative, a lesson in justice and grace. Officer Martinez, Zara said firmly, look at me. Martinez reluctantly met her eyes, expecting fury. Instead, he saw something unexpected. Compassion. How long have you been on the force? 3 years, Your Honor. Do you think you're a good police officer? 20 minutes ago he would have answered yes without hesitation. Now everything he thought he knew about himself was crumbling. I thought I was, but changed your mind. I detained a federal judge for driving to her friend's house. No, Zara said firmly. You detained a black woman for driving to her friend's house. The fact that I'm a federal judge doesn't make this any more wrong than if I were a teacher, nurse, or single mother trying to get home. She gestured to the watching crowd. Look at these faces, Officer Martinez. What do you see? Martinez observed the neighbors, other officers, the man still recording. He saw discomfort, embarrassment, and dawning recognition of something they'd suspected but never confronted. I see people who are uncomfortable. They're uncomfortable because they're witnessing something they know is wrong, but something that happens daily in this country. The only difference is that tonight it happened to someone with a title that makes it impossible to ignore. Officer Chen stepped forward. Your Honor, we'll file a full report. Officer Martinez will face appropriate disciplinary action. Zara held up her hand. Officer Chen, I'd like to propose something different. She turned back to Martinez. I'm giving you a choice. You can face whatever disciplinary action your department deems appropriate for unlawful detention, or you can help me turn this moment into something constructive. Martinez looked confused. I don't understand. I preside over civil rights violations and police misconduct cases. I see the worst outcomes when situations like this go unchecked. But I also believe in growth, education, and systemic change. She pulled out a business card. I want you to come to my courtroom next week, not as a defendant, but as a student. Sit through hearings about constitutional violations, watch how the justice system responds when people's rights are violated, then return to your training academy. Ma'am, trainer. I want you to become a trainer. Teach other officers about implicit bias, constitutional policing, and what it means to protect and serve all citizens. Make sure what happened tonight never happens to anyone else. The crowd listened intently. Patricia Bellwood had tears in her eyes. Rodriguez nodded slowly, understanding the profound gift being offered. Your Honor, Martinez said, voice thick with emotion, why would you do that for me? After what I put you through? Zara smiled for the first time that evening. Because justice isn't just about punishment. It's about healing, learning, and ensuring tomorrow is better than today. You made a mistake, but mistakes can become wisdom if we're brave enough to learn from them. What happened next would be discussed in Oakwood Heights for years. Judge Ashanti didn't simply drive away. She spent 20 minutes talking with officers, neighbors, and the recording witness. What you witnessed tonight, she told the crowd, happens to black Americans every day. The difference is that most people stopped, don't have titles that make you pay attention. Remember this discomfort the next time you hear about police stops, racial profiling, or people protesting injustice. Patricia Bellwood stepped forward. Your Honor, what can we do? Examine your assumptions. When you see a black person in your neighborhood, what's your first thought? When you call police about suspicious activity, ask whether you'd make the same call if the person were white. She addressed the broader crowd. Support police training that addresses implicit bias. Officer Martinez isn't evil. He's a product of a system that taught him to see certain people as inherently suspicious. We can change that system if we acknowledge it exists. Officer Chen approached as she prepared to leave. Your Honor, this will be a training case study for our entire department. Good. But more importantly, Officer Martinez has potential to become one of your best officers if you give him the chance to learn and grow. Martinez stood apart, struggling with the magnitude of what had occurred. Zara approached him. The fact that you're upset, questioning yourself, that's not weakness, that's the beginning of wisdom. Your Honor, I keep thinking about how many times I might have done this to people who couldn't defend themselves like you did. Use that feeling, let it motivate you to be better. She handed him her card. My clerk will call about visiting my courtroom. And Officer Martinez, thank you for being willing to listen. Not everyone has the courage to face their mistakes. In the weeks following, Martinez visited Judge Ashanti's courtroom, sitting through hearings on police misconduct, civil rights violations, and constitutional challenges. He watched people testify about traffic stops that escalated to violence, searches conducted without cause, and the daily fear experienced by communities of color. More importantly, he listened. He heard pain in voices of people stopped and questioned for simply existing in unexpected spaces. He began understanding that his encounter with Judge Ashanti wasn't isolated, but part of a larger pattern affecting millions daily. Returning to his department, Martinez volunteered for additional training on implicit bias and constitutional policing. He began speaking to recruits about his experience, using his story as a cautionary tale about assumption and prejudice. I thought I was a good cop, he told them. I thought I was protecting people. But I learned that being a good cop means protecting everyone's rights, especially when they don't look like what you expect. Judge Ashanti used her experience to advocate for reform from the bench. She incorporated implicit bias discussions into jury instructions when relevant, and worked with law enforcement agencies developing constitutional training programs. Most importantly, she continued choosing education over retribution. When police misconduct cases appeared before her, she sought learning opportunities rather than simply imposing punishment. Patricia Bellwood and Oakwood Heights underwent transformation too. They organized community meetings about bias and policing, brought in speakers discussing racial profiling history, and developed new guidelines for reporting suspicious activity. We realized we'd been part of the problem without knowing it, Patricia later reflected. Judge Ashanti's grace forced us to examine what we really mean when we talk about safety and suspicious behavior. 6 months later, Martinez received departmental commendation, not for arrests or citations, but for developing bias training for new recruits. His story became both teaching tool and redemption narrative about growth and change possibilities. Judge Ashanti spoke at that year's Police Academy graduation, addressing the most diverse class in department history. You're being entrusted with extraordinary power, she told them. The power to stop, question, search, arrest. That power comes with extraordinary responsibility. To use it fairly, constitutionally, and with respect for every person's dignity. She looked at the young faces before her, many people of color, many women, all carrying their own experiences into the profession. Lunch is at 9, went on to the You will make mistakes, we all do. When you make mistakes, you have a choice. Defend them, deny them, and repeat them, or learn from them and become better officers. Martinez listened with the intensity of someone who'd learned these lessons painfully. Beside him sat his new partner, Officer Keisha Williams, a young black woman inspired to join the force partly by stories like his. Stories of officers willing to confront bias and work for change. After the ceremony, Judge Ashanti approached Martinez. How are you doing? Better every day, Your Honor. Thank you for seeing something in me I didn't see in myself. I saw someone capable of growth. That's all any of us can ask for. The chance to be better tomorrow than today. As she prepared to leave, Martinez had one final question. Do you ever regret not filing a complaint? Not making this a bigger case? Judge Ashanti considered seriously. I've spent my career in courtrooms. I've seen what happens when we focus only on punishment without addressing root causes. I've seen officers fired, departments sued, communities torn apart. But rarely have I seen the transformation possible when we choose building bridges over walls. She paused, looking around the academy building, training the next generation. Could I have made you a symbol of everything wrong with policing? Yes. But I chose to make you a symbol of everything possible when we commit to doing better. I think that's had greater impact than any lawsuit could have. 2 years after the traffic stop, the story had become legend in law enforcement circles. Not as cautionary tale about getting caught, but as example of transformative justice in action. It was studied in police academies, discussed in civil rights courses, and referenced in community policing initiatives nationwide. For Zara Ashanti, the most meaningful impact was smaller and more personal. Leaving her courtroom one evening, she noticed a young black girl standing in the hallway with her mother. "Excuse me, Your Honor. I'm Tanya. This is my daughter, Essence. We saw you on the news and Essence wanted to meet you." Zara knelt to the little girl's level. "Hello, Essence. It's very nice to meet you. My mama says you're a judge." "That's right. Do you know what judges do? And they make sure things are fair." "Exactly. We try ensuring everyone gets treated fairly, no matter who they are or what they look like." Essence considered this. "Even when police officers are mean?" The question pierced Zara's heart. This child had already learned to be afraid, had internalized the reality that she might someday be stopped or questioned simply for being herself. "Especially then," Zara said firmly. "Everyone deserves respect and dignity. Everyone. Could I be a judge someday?" "Sweetheart, you could be anything you want. But if you become a judge, remember this. Justice isn't about being the most powerful person in the room. It's about using whatever power you have to protect people who need protection." That night, Martinez patrolled the same neighborhood where he'd stopped Judge Ashanti 2 years earlier. When he saw a young Latino man walking slowly, checking house numbers, his instinct wasn't suspicion. It was to offer help. "Excuse me, do you need help finding an address?" "Thanks, officer. Looking for 1247 Oak Street? My girlfriend's family is expecting me for dinner. 2 blocks down. Turn left. House numbers are terrible on this street. You might want to call when you get close." As he drove away, Martinez reflected on how different this interaction might have been 2 years ago. How he might have seen threat instead of someone simply lost. The transformation hadn't been easy, requiring him to confront uncomfortable truths about himself and the system he served, but it opened his eyes to what policing could be when rooted in respect, fairness, and genuine service. The story of Judge Zara Ashanti and Officer Braden Martinez reminds us that we all face moments when we can choose between building bridges or walls. We encounter situations where we can respond with grace or grudges, education or anger. Every day we make assumptions about people based on appearance, background, or circumstances. Every day we have opportunities to challenge those assumptions, look deeper, and see full humanity in every person we encounter. The question isn't whether you'll face these moments. You will. The question is how you'll respond. Will you see threats or neighbors? Respond to mistakes with punishment or growth opportunities. Use whatever power you have to tear down or build up. Judge Ashanti's story shows that the most powerful force for change isn't anger or outrage, though those emotions are sometimes necessary. The most powerful force is the radical act of seeing humanity in people who have wronged us, choosing to help them improve rather than simply making them pay. And this doesn't mean accepting injustice or excusing harmful behavior. It means understanding that lasting change comes not from destroying people who make mistakes, but from helping them learn and become part of solutions. As you move forward from this story, remember that you have power to create change in your community, workplace, and family. You have power to choose grace over grudges, understanding over assumptions, hope over hatred. The question is, what story will you choose to write? If this story moved, inspired, or changed how you think about justice, grace, and second chances, let us know in the comments. Share your experiences choosing compassion over condemnation, or times when someone's grace changed your life. If you believe in stories' power to change hearts and minds, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories challenging us to be better, do better, and build a world where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. Because that's what justice really means. Not just punishment for wrongdoing, but possibility of redemption, growth, and a better tomorrow for all of us. Remember, your voice matters, your choices matter, and your story matters. Use them wisely. 5 years after that pivotal evening in Oakwood Heights, the ripple effects of Judge Ashanti's choice continue, expanding across the nation. What began as one woman's decision to transform injustice into education has sparked a nationwide movement called Traffic Stop to Teaching Moment, a program now implemented in over 200 police departments. Officer Martinez, now Detective Martinez, completed law school and serves as the program's national coordinator while maintaining his police duties. He travels monthly to train departments on constitutional policing and implicit bias recognition. Every traffic stop is an opportunity to either build trust or destroy it, he tells new recruits. Judge Ashanti taught me that our badges represent service, not superiority. Judge Ashanti recently published a book titled When Justice Chooses Grace, which became required reading in 15 law schools and police academies. The proceeds fund scholarships for minority students pursuing law enforcement and judicial careers. She continues presiding over federal cases while serving on a national task force examining police reform. Patricia Bellwood transformed Oakwood Heights into a model community for police-civilian relations. Their neighborhood now hosts quarterly Coffee with Cops sessions and bias awareness workshops that have reduced 911 calls about suspicious activity by 78%. Young Essence, now 13, founded her middle school's Justice Club, where students discuss fairness, equality, and community service. She still plans to become a judge, inspired by the woman who showed her that true strength lies in lifting others up. Most remarkably, the Ashanti Protocol, a framework for turning police misconduct into educational opportunities, has been adopted in 12 states. It emphasizes restorative justice over punitive measures when officers demonstrate genuine willingness to learn and change. The traffic stop that could have ended a career instead launched a movement, proving that grace, when coupled with accountability, can create transformation that punishment alone never could achieve.